Hello everybody. It's been a minute, huh? Been one crazy year and some change. For those of you that originally started following Allison and myself on this journey, specifically having to do with this bad boy here, many of you have been asking like, hey, what's the status with the Airstream? Well, after a baby and COVID and moving twice and losing a whole bunch of work because of, I shouldn't have said the pandemic that shall be unnamed. We'll do that. We finally found a little bit of time to slowly but surely start getting back into the Airstream and get this thing done. Kind of had a little bit of a feeling like, man, maybe we started this thing a year too late. It would have been nice to have had this done or been working on this prior to all that. But hey, hindsight's 2020. I will go ahead and preface this like Airstream. I hope somebody from corporate is watching because this definitely has to do with you guys. In fact, let's start with that right there. Just in fact to confirm that this is an official Airstream, this is the VIN plate right here showing the date of manufacture. So this was manufactured in 1991. And here's all the information. There's the VIN number, Jackson Center, Ohio. So yeah, Airstream Incorporated. We'd love to hear from you guys because notice some things. Definitely, initially some of our observations that we made were clear aftermarket, or as I like to call it, shade tree mechanicry. I think that's a word. As far as like these were things that happened after this Airstream left the factory, more than likely by the owners who had it, and however many times this thing traded hands. I am gonna probably something I should have done when we originally bought this thing. I'm gonna check the VIN and see if I can figure out how many different owners this thing actually had. Couple small things, right? Like for example, here, one of the windows, or a few of the windows actually, they were put in upside down. I can tell because the etched numbers and DOT information are in fact upside down. Roadside marker light over here, what's that? That's about, we'll call that 6.5 inches or so. Go over here to the curbside, I'm gonna call that about 5 inches. From the top. They're not, and I don't believe that was by design. It doesn't, to my, logical brain, it doesn't make any sense. So maybe if somebody wants to get back to us on that one, if they've noticed that on their Airstreams. I know when we went and toured those other Airstreams, you could check, maybe Allie will be able to put the link in there. When we went and checked out some other brand new Airstreams to get some inspiration, I didn't notice that there was a lack of symmetry in the lighting or any of the other trim that was on the Airstream. The only non-symmetrical areas I would expect to see is like, well, example, you have a door on one side, whereas you don't on the other. That makes sense, but not with the trim pieces and the lighting in the marker lights. This marker from PPG, because this is where this glass is made. Again, this is on its side, so I don't know if that's by, this is a curved piece of glass. But again, there's inconsistencies there. One of the big things that we noticed as we are starting to strip things off of this so that I can replace some of the aluminum panels in there, obviously somebody came in and replaced this bolt, more than likely because it rusted out. And you have to ask yourself the question, well, why did it rust out? Or even like up here, you can see there's an appears to be an excess amount of sealant, like silicone, used to seal this doorway. And you have to ask yourself the question why, and you're gonna see a better view of it from the inside. But if you look right here, you can actually see where there's light coming through. Like you can see through to the inside where the insulation would be on this Airstream. If you look right here, like you can see, like this was not the original bolt to this. This is something somebody put in afterwards that I'm gonna have to like cut out now. But if you look really closely, you can see there's light coming through there. And when you look at all the sealant that was put around this, And I know for a fact that like the walls hadn't been taken down because we were the first ones to take all the interior aluminum walls down. So this came from the factory like that. So I'm just curious, like, where was the quality assurance, quality control at? Like, did you not QA QC this thing before it left the factory? Or was in 1991, did Airstream say, you know what? We don't need to worry about quality anymore. We've made enough of a name for ourselves. Or they're just saying, they happen to wake up on this particular day and said, you know what? This Airstream, screw it. Because we know, where are we at now? 32 or 30 years later, Lynn and Allison are gonna get this thing and they're gonna have to try to redo this thing. Like this makes you think, like, we should call this channel This Old Airstream, or even like the Money Pit -2 on wheels, or Money Pit on wheels. There you go. We could make a movie out of this. There is an unbelievable amount of Olympic style rivets used on this thing, and I'm pretty sure that like one of the like most notable things about Airstream is the fact that they use mainly buck rivets for riveting this thing together. Buck rivets are stronger. They use buck riveting and especially flush riveting on aircraft just because of the strength of the rivets. They take a little bit more skill and they take a little bit more time to do, but that was always like a thing about Airstream, right? And so you can even see right here, like, here is a buck rivet, and you use like a pneumatic hammer to do that. So you'll have the pneumatic hammer on the outside, and then on the inside you'll have like a bucking bar that you push against the rivet, and then the hammer flattens that out. It's not super slow, but it's not super quick either, and it's usually a 2-person job. Whereas this right here is an Olympic rivet. An Olympic rivet, you could just do it from the one end. You don't have to have a second person to do it. It's pretty quick. It also uses a pneumatic riveter to create that little flange on the rivet. But then there's an additional step where once you trim the little puller bar off the rivet, then you have to smooth it and polish it and so on and so forth. But I know Airstream uses those Olympic rivets for very specific applications, but majority of the rivets in an Airstream should be buck riveted. Instead, I mean, look right here. 2 main pieces connected. It's all Olympic rivets. And they're not known to be as strong or as, you know, water repellent, so on and so forth, as a buck rivet. So it just makes you ask the question, like, what other shortcuts did they take in making this Airstream? You look at this, the aluminum, the sheeting here, you can see, like, yeah, it was cut, but there's no uniformity to it. It almost looks like part of it was like just ripped. Whatever. We're gonna just cut this out. However we cut it out. Whereas everywhere else, when you see how things are cut, like they're cut with fairly, you know, tight tolerances, because the whole point is this thing's supposed to be waterproof, at a bare minimum water resistant. It shouldn't be having holes and gaps in it like I showed you on the doorway. But you see a lot of little spots and parts like this, or even like here on the end cap. Like, what was this all about? And I get it, like on one hand you'd be like, oh well, they won't notice, it's gonna be on the inside of Airstream. So you got all this excess right here, but then over here, there's like less than that looks like about 3/8 of an inch to the edge of that. And so you see a lot of spots too, where whether it was like right over here, or even like look over here at this window, like you can see on this, around this window and this edge, like they had to put a bunch of just like silicone on this, and you can see by the color of the silicone, we've showed you this before, but you can see by the color of it, like there's mold and stuff there. So that means that water has gotten into here. The only reason that we see this and see things like this is because, well, we took off the interior aluminum panels. We've taken the insulation out. We saw the mold in the insulation. And the very first thing that even started this was after we got this thing, it started down here in the curbside front corner where there was rot in the subfloor. And you're like, well, how do you get rot in the subfloor? Well, water. How did you get water? Well, water leaked in through the Airstream. Same thing with all these awnings. I'm sure it appears as if these awnings came with the Airstream, but there's even, you see different, where on one side the awnings are put in with screws, the other side the awnings put in with rivets, and a couple of those spots is where you can see the water's gotten in and leaked down. So yeah, it just really makes you want to ask the question is, what happened to this Airstream? I would love to visit the factory and ask them, like, hey, what were you guys doing in 1991? Like here, they use silicone to write in top of window for here. And again, I know I have a North Carolina public education, but I would think that that would be pretty well implied that this should be the top of the window versus this being the top of the window, because that would be the bottom. Like, unless this thing was somehow upside down, or maybe they were building this thing to get shipped to Australia initially. I don't know, but even then that wouldn't make any sense. Obviously, Allie and I are in the middle of this. We've committed, so we're gonna keep on doing. So I'm curious, Airstream, like, I know there's no warranty or guarantee, but I would be really interested to hear what you guys have to say about this one. I doubt we'll hear anything back. I would be surprised, but it would be interesting. One of these days, I know we plan to go to the factory and see if we could get a tour. They do that kind of stuff, but it's like, hey Airstream, what gives? I know it's been a minute, and some of you are probably wondering, like, hey, what are we doing about this thing? And it's a question, believe me, that I get asked daily from Allison. What are we doing about the Airstream? But we're gonna continue on with this because we're determined at this point. But don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell notification. I'm guessing it would be right there. Yeah. Down there, and check out some of the other videos if it's been a minute, but we are definitely going to be getting back to work on this thing slowly but surely.